Bert, thank you. Great to have you with us here on the post-game show as the Nets fall with a thud in Boston. Unfortunately, 139-96. This was wire-to-wire Celtics.
Yeah, think about this. The last 44 minutes of 39 seconds, Boston had a double-digit lead. They led by at least 30 points over the final 25 minutes of the game. It was never a game. The Nets got off to a slow start. They weren't getting it done on the defensive end. You know, for the Brooklyn Nets, you just let this one go because you're not going to gain anything from this. And honestly, even Joe Mazzulla, the Boston head coach, his team, you actually develop a lot of bad habits in a game like this. It was bad all the way around. Give Boston credit. They knocked down shots. Boston's outbeaten the Brooklyn Nets 10 straight times. But this was very disappointing. The effort just wasn't there, but Boston was making shots as well.
All right, let's take a look at the final stats from this one. And again, you're going to see a lot of statistical domination. Celtics shooting at a near 60% clip. Frank, look at the threes. 26 of 54 for Boston.
Yeah, there were times Boston was just coming down. It was free and easy. Coming down the court, not taking threes without even a hand in their face. I mean, they had 26 threes compared to 9 for the Brooklyn Nets. And, really the game got away early, and then the Nets actually cut it to 22. And at that point, you're thinking, well, maybe they can make it somewhat interesting. But, of course, Boston went on a run toward the end of the second quarter, and the second half was really just about padding stats. And Boston, really what's more important to them is padding that win total. Joe Mazzulla is going to coach the team Giannis at the All-Star game. That's what you get for having the best record at a certain point in the season. So congratulations to them. But right now they have bigger goals, getting home court advantage throughout the playoffs.
Well, you mentioned the run that Boston has against the Nets right now. 10 straight wins, including 6 in the regular season. And there's just something about playing the Celtics right now. The matchups, I mean, would it be different if Kevin Durant was in? Obviously, things would be different. But just that combination of Tatum and Brown, and then you mentioned they have some really nice complementary pieces around
so
them.
January 12th was the first game that the Nets played without Kevin Durant. If you go back to that game, that was a nationally televised game. It was played at Barclays Center. The Nets had a bunch of days to prepare, and they went after Boston that night. They played with a lot of energy. They were very good defensively. The fourth quarter, the better team prevailed, and that night Boston held the Brooklyn Nets to just 16 points because they can get it done defensively. And the biggest issue the Nets would have on a night like tonight is you take Kevin Durant out. Obviously, you're removing a top 5 player in the NBA, but he has that size as well. So he's going to make Jason Tatum work on the defensive end. Then you don't have Ben Simmons in there. He's not going to give you much offensively, but at least defensively, he can guard Jaylen Brown. He can guard Jason Tatum. What I like about Boston, it looks like an 80s team or a 90s team where they're just big all along. And Marcus Smart didn't even play tonight. You put Marcus Smart out there in the starting lineup, you could still have Al Horford, Robert Williams, Jaylen Brown. Obviously, Tatum's going to start. I just named 6 players. Yeah. But you know what I mean? They just come at you in waves with the size that they have. They bring Malcolm Brogdon off the bench, Derek White. Top to bottom, all they did after losing the NBA Finals was get better in terms of a roster and the experience that they have. They're going to be very difficult to beat 4 times in a 7-game series. Yeah,
standout performance nets them their 37th win of the season. Frank, they're in the Eastern Conference standings. The Bucks 2.5 back. Nets are in that 4th spot, 5.5 back. You were hoping they'd find a way to just kind of keep their head above water in this one, which they've been doing a pretty good job of that lately in the absence of KD.
Absolutely. So they came in having won 4 out of 6 games. They're 4-7 now without Kevin Durant. All right. It's better than what you did last year when you went 5-16, and then you hear Kevin Durant talk. It sounds like he wants to play in the All-Star game, and I think he'd probably want to get a couple of games in before that. So it sounds as if Kevin Durant is probably a lot closer. Now, does that mean he's going to play Saturday? I don't think that's the case, and the schedule's going to get tough. Saturday's a big game because next week you get the Clippers, you get the Phoenix Suns. Those are going to be difficult opponents. That's why getting this game on Saturday night against a Washington team, which has been on a run lately, too. So you don't get any easy games in the NBA. But the good thing for the Nets, and there'll be a big-time film session over the next couple of days where Jacques Vaughn will be very disappointed in the way that they played in that first quarter where, yes, you're missing shots. The Celtics are making shots, but the Nets just didn't do enough defensively to make it difficult for Boston.
We got to take a break. We got more coming up. We're going to hear from Jacques Vaughn about the outcome of this one. Boston winning it 139-96. We'll take you around the NBA for some of the key games and storylines, and then more post-game reaction with Megan and the media. We got more coming up right after this. a look at the leading scorers for tonight's game. Kyrie Irving had the 20, sat the fourth. Cam Thomas, 19 points off the bench. Meantime, Jason Tatum just keeps doing what he does with 31, and Jaylen Brown with 26. So that 30-plus per game average is sticking there for Tatum.
And I'll tell you what, I love looking at plus-minus, you know, the score when you're out on the court. Think about this. The Boston Celtics, when Jason Tatum was in the game, he was a plus 46. Wow. That was a game high. Al Horford was a plus 37. For the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving was a minus 31. That was the high there. Every player on the Brooklyn Nets, obviously, was a minus when they played. The only guy in the Boston Celtics who was a minus, Justin Jackson, who came in late, he was a -1. So they can give him a hard time after the game.
Yeah, he's looking at the stat sheet like, come on, guys, you could have put me in a little earlier.
We won by 43. Let's get it done here.
We talked about it on the pregame show, but in case you missed it today, there was huge WNBA news. Free agency open, and one of the best players in the league, Breanna Stewart, was reportedly narrowed her choices to a couple teams. It was her team, the Seattle Storm, right? Or it was the New York Liberty. And you kind of looked at this and thought, she kind of tipped her hand, right?
Yeah, I thought so too. If you're going to leave, or if you're going to resign with your team, would you really say you have it narrowed down to another team? And here she is, you know, with everyone does this now, the reveal on social media. Also, Kevin Durant was heavily involved in this, it seemed like. He kept tweeting things out. The Liberty were responding. Yeah. She was responding. I'm not talking about tampering. I'm not trying to say that happened. But you look at her right here.
She's a free agent. There's no tampering.
That's right. You could say, you know, she's an incredibly accomplished player on every level, the collegiate level, with the national team, and obviously in the WNBA. Our good friend Rebecca Lobo, I think, is going to be here on February 11th. We can get the Lobo down on Breanna Stewart. But she's a great player. What's cool about it too. You know, she is from the New York area. She's from Syracuse and became, you look at her record at college, like she never lost. I mean, every year she was in the Final Four in the national championship game. She's an outstanding player. And if you're, you know, a Liberty fan, Brooklyn, it's going to be exciting because they've made themselves a lot better. This team, you know, should do big and great things this season.
All right, so something to look forward to with the New York Liberty. Meantime, as Frank said, Nets just put this one in the rearview mirror as they lose at 139-96. Let's hear from head coach Jacques Vaughn about the loss.
Jacques, you mentioned the pace and getting out in front of it and not allowing the defense to set. With the way that the Celtics came in and started this first quarter, what did you attribute that to?
Yeah, that was the biggest difference in the game. I think they started out, I don't know, 8 for 8 from 3 or somewhere around there. So that barrage of them making shots, and then we weren't making shots at the same time. So not a great start for us. I told the group I'm disappointed in the fact that I did not have them ready to play. 46-16, we've been a group who's pretty much been focused and ready to play. So it was a great challenge for us on the road where they hit first. What was our response? Give them credit. We talked about making more threes and shooting more threes in them. Neither of those things happened. And they made some tough shots, and they got going early, and that was the difference in the game.
Jacques, last year, I mean, you guys were woefully undersized against this team before, and that was with Kevin. Without Kevin and TJ and Ben, how much of what you saw out there tonight do you attribute to just being significantly outsized, and how much of it do you attribute to guys' minds just weren't right in the first quarter?
Well, I think we got hit first, and so I think it caught us off guard a little bit, being on the road. They made shots. At the same time, we had some really good looks open early. And then that becomes a mental challenge. How are you going to respond? And I think it affected us on the other end of the floor. They drove the basketball, got to our rim to a point where we put Day'Ron and Nick in together. So I think that was a reflection of how they were able to drive us. Nothing that we didn't talk about before the game, the offensive rebounding, the driving component, and then being able to contest and make those threes hard. So the challenge is whoever is playing, whether we're undersized, whether we don't have the length at wing, whether we have one center and there are two centers, is to continue to take the challenge every possession of doing your responsibility. So I give Boston a lot of credit tonight. They brought it to us.
Even in some of the losses you guys had without Kevin, you guys been able to answer runs that the team has made. pretty frequently. I mean, what was absent about that tonight, you think?
Yeah, and I mentioned that to the group, Alex. That's a good, you're spot on with that. That we've answered challenges down 5, 6, 17, 15, it didn't matter. It just sometimes, you know, I'll be honest, this is part of NBA. Sometimes this was a night where they hit first, they hit hard, and it hurt. And we weren't able to get off the mat like we needed to and respond like we have in the past. So you take this one on the chin and you keep moving. Learn from it.
Coach, you said you didn't prepare your team for this matchup. Do you mean defending the three? Do you mean getting off to a good start? Do you mean in general?
Yeah, I said I was disappointed in myself. I'm always hold myself to a standard that I want to hold them to. And so 46 to 16, you know, from the first quarter, I take the blame of all of it, of not having them detailed to the game plan, the discipline that it takes to get hit on the road and respond. So a little bit of everything.
Chuck,
I got to do my part.
you mentioned several times them hitting first. As you watch it unfold, why do you think you guys struggled so much tonight to hit back?
It was a direct sign that we didn't hit back. We had 2 fouls in the first quarter. And we talked about that. That's just a physicality piece that we didn't bring to the table tonight, and that was shown in the fouls. So we mentioned that in the huddle. We mentioned that at halftime. Really, Nick, overall, I think if you look at how we were moving, the energy and effort that we needed to beat this team tonight, we were lacking that from the beginning of the game.
Okay. Thanks, Jimmy.
Okay, guys.
And what he was talking about there is basically what the Celtics brought to the table. I mean, they, again, leading in every statistical category. We thought maybe the Nets would move the ball a little more. It was the Celtics running up and down the court, fast break points, etc.
Yeah, there's really nothing to gain from this game for the Brooklyn Nets. So I think the last thing that Jacques Vaughn is going to do is sit there and start criticizing his players after they get blown out the way that they did. They got crushed start to finish. So he's going to fall on the sword, say that I wasn't the one that had them ready. He's not going to sit there and start identifying. Because if you start identifying a couple of guys, you just look up and down. Nobody really played that well, especially on the defensive end. So he's doing the right thing here. It's a long season. And the one thing, too, you look at the schedule, we talked about it a lot, where they have the home games. Now they're up in Boston. Now they're going to be home for a while, and the one road game is going to be in New York. So this was always going to be a hard road trip because it's the best team in the league. It's a team that's beaten you 9 straight times. But I think you almost go up there with the wrong mindset of, oh, that's right, we've got to go back on the road for this one game. So everything about it was bad. And then you have Boston coming out, which hadn't played since Saturday, and they knocked down their first 8 3-pointers. I think Jacques Vaughn handled it the right way. He knows exactly what he's doing. It doesn't make any sense to sit there and start trashing the team left and right. Everyone who watched the game knows that they weren't good enough tonight. Right. So the head coach is going to take one for the team and blame himself.
We're going to take a break. We got more coming up here on the post game. We will have game highlights and more player reaction as well when we continue right after this. Tonight's game highlights, and Frank, we mentioned this. It was a 27-4 run out of the gate for Boston. Jason Tatum leading the way.
And you sound kind of mean saying that, highlights. There were no highlights for the Brooklyn Nets. But Tatum right there walking around 3 defenders. This was after the Nets had called timeout. They missed a jumper. Derek White grabbed the rebound, dunked at the other end. That's when you know you're in trouble.
Our obligatory video roll continues as Boston moves it up once again, already leading 30-7, and they were just knocking down threes.
It's just not enough intensity there from the Brooklyn Nets. You're allowing Boston to walk right into what they want to get.
Nets trying to climb back in it. You mentioned they got to within 22. Kyrie part of that. Good move here. Going to hit the little running floater. Still a 24-point lead.
And I thought it started early in the second quarter. Cam Thomas off the bench scored 10 points, and the Nets started to crawl back in. Right here, Joe Harris with the 3 makes it a 22-point game.
Late in the half now, Tatum going to bury a 3 from up top as their barrage continued. 79 first-half points for the Celtics. They were up by 32 at their 34 at the break. And then third quarter, Boston picking up right where they left off. Little loose ball, but Tatum's going to get it, give it to Brown, and hits yet another 3.
Both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum 7 for 12 on threes for both players. That's 14 3-pointers for the two of them.
Kyrie here going to come up with a nice little drive, a little pull-up shot. He had 20, but they were up big, and he was not going to play the fourth.
Yeah, Kyrie had a couple of good moments there in the third. I was thinking, you know what? I need to bump my scoring average up before they sit me out in the fourth quarter. And there's Tatum again. knocking down a three to make it a 38-point game.
I mean, amazing that Kyrie had 20. He could have had 50, and they still would have lost if he'd done that. Peyton Pritchard going to miss the three. Ball going to get batted around a little bit here. Markieff Morris throws it away, and then Malcolm Brogdon, another option for them, hits a three.
Look how easy it was. And I think that'll be disappointing, too. It's one thing for the starters to play like that. You want to see the backup show a little bit more intensity. And then here's Grant Williams, who came out not long after this, and Justin Jackson went in the game. Grant Williams plays a lot of minutes, and Jock Vaughn's thinking, we got a game Saturday night against Washington. I'm going to focus on that.
So your game summary brought to you by Infinity. The Celtics 26 of 54 from beyond the arc, and that 30-point edge in the first, the second largest first quarter deficit for the Nets in franchise history. Frank and I will take another break, and when we come back, we got more on tonight's game, and we will look ahead to that game coming up Saturday against the Wizards and what needs to change for the Nets. Well, starting now, the Nets will not have a game outside New York City until after the All-Star break. On Saturday, they will host the Wizards and try to finish a season sweep after winning their first three meetings with Washington so far. Coverage begins at 5:30 with the FanDuel pregame. One thing we mentioned on the pregame show was somebody's got to score around Kyrie. Yeah. In the last game, that was about everybody. 66 bench points tonight, just 41, but he did not have that complimentary piece.
Nah, and it wasn't even about the scoring. It was really about being able to stop Boston. Because when you look, you know, the Nets had 96 points. It's more than enough to win with in theory. I get the game was different, so when guys were coming in, and you look at the numbers there. But this was about not being able to stop anybody. You know, they trailed by 40 or more points the last 10 minutes of this game. This was never a game. One thing about that Washington game, Washington was supposed to play tonight against Detroit, but Detroit never made it out of Dallas. See if you could follow the bouncing ball here. You know, if it rains and it gets cold in Dallas, the city shuts down. Yeah. So Detroit never made it back home to play Washington. Washington then has a game Friday at home against Portland, so we'll be on a back-to-back when they play the Nets on Saturday.
All right, so obviously just a lot different in terms of scoring there, and we just saw so many guys that were able to fill up the basket, but you're right, it was more about... You know what it was about? It was about, like Jock Vaughn said, basically nothing was working right for the Nets tonight, so that's why they got to kind of put this
early on. You know, the Nets were long jumper and then a rebound for Boston. Boston comes down, they get a basket. Nets come down, long jumper, no chance of getting an offensive rebound. So when you're playing against a team like Boston, I get that they have size. If you're not going to knock down jumpers, you got to be a little bit aggressive trying to get to the basket, move the ball. He talked about energy. They just didn't have any energy tonight. Everything was flat. And when you're going up against a terrific team, and it means something to Boston to play against the Brooklyn Nets and Kyrie Irving, you know, they lost them in 5 games in a playoff series a couple of years ago. Last year, they swept them. So Boston, after having all this time off, was going to be ready to play. One team was ready. The other one wasn't. And the Brooklyn Nets need to be at the top of their game when they're shorthanded the way they are to give themselves a chance. They did that on January 12th. On February 1st, they never had a shot.
All right, our game was 1 of 9 matchups. Checking out some news from around the NBA, LeBron James just 89 points away from passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to become its all-time leading scorer. Devin Booker has not played since Christmas due to a groin injury, but he could reportedly return Tuesday when the Suns visit Brooklyn. As Frank mentioned, tonight's game between Washington and Detroit postponed because bad weather kept the Pistons from leaving Dallas, where they played Monday. And in Philadelphia, the NBA's leading scorer, Joel Embiid, took the floor against Orlando. So leading the NBA 33.6 points per game, and he was at it early doing a little work with Shake Milton, and he's going to get the ball back. Sixers by 14 at that point.
And Embiid's really started to turn on. He had a great game over the weekend against Nikola Jokic. He'd love to win an MVP. I think Philly fans want to see him get out of the second round. That's their goal.
Where is he on the Frank MVP meter?
He's definitely in the top 5 with Tatum, with Giannis, with Jokic, and with Luka Doncic. No question about it. And we'll see when Kevin Durant comes back, because he was in there before he got hurt.
Back on Monday, by the way, Orlando had a big rally against the Sixers to win it, but on Philly's home court, they weren't having it.
Yeah, Orlando's having they have a lot of talent. They're going to be a dangerous team with Paolo Banchero. Franz Wagner. But tonight, Philly, you would think, after the way that they played the other night, where they gave up a big lead in the second half, I think they were up 21 in the first half, come back and win. And there's Embiid with 28 points last night. Harden really starting to round into form now. 1 rebound shy of a triple-double.
All right, let's get some more highlights now. Trailblazers visiting the Grizzlies. Memphis in a little bit of a funk right now. Time winding down. Ja Morant to Zaire Williams. He hits a 3. Grizzlies by 3. And then Morant doing a little work to give him a 7-point lead.
Yeah, Ja Morant is a brilliant player. He'll be an all-star. There's no question about it. A lot of people thought he should have started, but guess what? The fans vote. They voted Luka Doncic, Steph Curry. Hard to argue with that.
Good little left-handed lay-in. Fourth quarter, Anthony Simons with the step back. Suddenly the Blazers down by 3, and then they take the lead thanks to Damian Lillard.
Yeah, Lillard's still having a great season. So dangerous from outside. And here you see him with the lead. And look at that.
The theme of that one, Memphis up early, Blazers come back, and they win it. So Memphis has lost 6 of 7.
And it really started with that game that they had in Friday night a couple weeks ago against the Lakers, the Shannon Sharp game, as we'll call it. That's where things started. I think with Memphis losing tonight, it's almost assured now. Maybe one win will do it for Michael Malone and the Denver Nuggets coaching staff to be coaching Team LeBron at the All-Star game.
All right,
New York guy, Michael Malone.
Yeah, Warriors and Timberwolves. Warriors down 1, loose ball. Anthony Lamb pushes it out to Steph. Steph hits a 3, Warriors by 2. And then second quarter, Jordan Poole will drive inside, get the layup to go, plus he steps to the line. Game tied at 42 after the free throw. That's when Steph started stepping it up. He had 21 in the first half.
Remember, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the year that Steph Curry was available, they drafted Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio. They actually drafted 2 point guards when they could have had Steph Curry. History would have been a little bit different if they had taken him.
Late in the third, Warriors by 9. Kevon Looney, nice bounce pass inside for the dunk. Warriors up by 11, and they're playing in the fourth, and Warriors making a little, get a little threat from the T-Wolves.
I'm actually following this game. Yeah, Minnesota just, now it's tied. See how quickly things change.
Let me just disturb you for a moment as you watch the game. Western Conference standings, it's Nuggets by 3 over the Grizzlies. You bring up a great point. That probably locks things down for Denver in the All-Star game coaching in that one.
And if you look again, with the Warriors, you know, they can catch the Sacramento Kings and finish third. They have to start winning some games. The other team to watch out for, and you mentioned it before, the Phoenix Suns were really slumping. Now they're 2 games over 500, and Devin Booker, I'm sure Jock Vaughn is thrilled that there's a chance that Devin Booker will be available next Thursday. He's an outstanding player. So Phoenix, which really had slumped, now has their head above water. They could be a dangerous team the final 30 games in the Western Conference.
We got to take a break. More coming up. More post-game reaction, and Frank and I look ahead to the game coming up against the Wizards on Saturday. Stick around. I mentioned earlier that the Nets are not going to have a game outside New York City until after the All-Star break. 6 of their 7 games between now and then will take place at Barclays Center, plus there is one against the Knicks at the Garden. They will host the Wizards on Saturday, and then they'll have home games next week against the Clippers, Suns, Bulls, and Sixers. So a game-by-game series looking against Boston. They've won the 3, obviously, this season, 103-92 on December 4th. January 12th, they won it at Barclays, 109-98. And then tonight, it was an absolute blowout. Let's hear from Seth Curry with Megan Triplett.
Seth, Jock Vaughn told us that it all came down to that first quarter. What did you see that allowed the Celtics to get off to a fast pace like that?
Yeah, I mean, we were down 30 in the first quarter, so kind of everything went their way in that first quarter. They're making threes, getting to the lane, getting layups, and we weren't making shots. So we were playing against we were getting stopped. So we were playing against a set defense the whole time, and we weren't scoring. So this really came down to the first quarter.
Seth, you guys have been pretty good at weathering. You know, when a team punches, you guys have been good at punching back even without Kevin. I guess, but why do you think that was absent tonight?
We kind of had down too much. We kind of did in that second quarter. Kind of made a little run, and they pushed it back up to 30. But I mean, that's a good team. We're obviously on demand, and we got to play perfect basketball to get a win here. So we just didn't get off to a good start, and it's nice like this. 82 games in a season. It's going to be a few nights like this.
So what's Jock's message after a game like this?
We gotta just learn from it, man, and move on. I mean, it's probably another team we're gonna see down the line, so learn from it, move on, and get better.
What do you learn from a game like this? What do you take out of it?
It's the right mindset to start the game. That's pretty much, you got to come with the right mindset, the right disposition, and get off to a good start, because the kind of the first 6 minutes we were out of the game.
Well, check out Cam Thomas' numbers. Again, not a lot of prolific scoring in this one. Kyrie led him with 20. He did have 19 off the bench, 7 of 16 from the field, 1 of 6 from beyond the arc as he logged a little more than 24 minutes on the court. Let's hear from Cam Thomas.
Kim, what did you see in the first quarter that was the biggest difference how the Celtics to get off to that big push?
Yeah, they started off, credit to them, they started off hot. I didn't start off like 8 for 8. They wasn't missing, so that was really the key. They started off fast and we started off slow.
You guys went on that run in that second quarter. What was working well that allowed you guys to find that offensive flow?
Yeah, we were just getting stops. We had a lot more pressure on them, get up in them a little bit. Got stops, and then we was getting out in transition, scoring fast, scoring quick. So I feel like that's really that really helped us. So we gotta just build on that against these guys.
Do you look at this one and say that overall it was just not being ready for the Celtics defense and offense, or what do you just learn from a game like this?
That we can't mess around against teams like this. Can't mess around against great teams in the East. Because then that'll be the result. So we got to just start out better and just lock in on the game plan way more than we did.
What was JB's message, either at halftime or when he came in after the game?
Play hard. I mean, there's only so much you can do when you get down by that much early on. So, you just want to keep fighting, keep pushing, and just try to make it a little bit of a game. But, there's only so much you can say after, a first half like that.
That is true. That's kind of the message. Yeah. What's your final takeaway on this one?
And obviously this game you could just say, all right, this happens over the course of a long NBA season, but I think you also have to be realistic about it. It is Boston, and now they've beaten you 10 straight times. That includes a sweep last year in the playoffs when you did have Kevin Durant. You haven't beaten them since November of 2021. So if you're the Brooklyn Nets, you have to realize all roads to the NBA Finals go through Boston. And Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving came to Brooklyn because they want to win a championship. So I think, yes, you could look at it and say, well, we didn't have Kevin Durant. We didn't have him January 12th either. Absolutely. But Boston is a terrific team, and I think Jacques Vaughn knows the Nets are going to get better, but they're going to have to get a lot better if they want to play. They could end up playing this team again in the playoffs to beat them 4 times. I'm not worried about Kevin Durant. I know what I'm going to get out of Kevin Durant. It's going to have to be the other guys that are going to have to prove that they're up to the task because this team is championship ready. There's no question about it.
All right, one final take on what's ahead. As we mentioned, they're going to be sleeping in their own beds for quite a while coming up.
Yeah, and I think they catch a bit of a break here, too, because, like I mentioned, Washington plays Portland on Friday, so they'll be on the second night of a back-to-back. Plus, it's one of those odd ones where they're playing 7 o'clock at night in Washington. The following night at 6 o'clock in New York, so you really feel like you're playing a back-to-back. That's an important game because Kevin Durant's not going to be available. You win that gives you 5 wins without Kevin Durant. Remember last year, the 21 games he missed, they went 5 and 16.
Right.
For me, Saturday's huge because next week at the Clippers and the way Kawhi's playing, they're a different team, and then you're going to get also Phoenix. It's not going to be easy.
All right, so we will see you again coming up Saturday on Yes and the Yes app. Pre-game coverage for the Nets beginning at 5:30, opening tip a little after 6. Thanks for joining us. Until then, take care.